In the meantime, we're going to start talking about our parasha. And there's a very, very interesting story actually brought in the Talmud. This is going to teach us, once again, as we spoke many times, about the essence and the DNA of who we are and of who, not only who Am Yisrael are, but also what is the world, what is Eretz Yisrael, the whole creation of Hashem. So there's a story in the Gemara that the Talmud brings. In Masechet Ta'anit. In Masechet Ta'anit, the Gemara brings a story about Rabbi Alazhar and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Alazhar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, he was walking once and he saw a person that was very ugly. So he sees this ugly person, and listen, what happens is mamish interesting. Yeah, he says to him, Amalai, Reika, Kama Machoyar Oisai Haish. And he told him, look how ugly you look. Can you imagine Rabbi Alazhar, one of the famous Tanoim, he's walking and he sees this person walking with him and he tells him, you are so ugly. Amar Loi, so the person replies to Rabbi Alazhar, this is a good answer also. Lech ve'amar, exactly. Lech ve'amar la'uman sha'asa'ani kama m'chayar klizer shal sisa, which means, go tell the person who created me how ugly his creation is. Exactly. This is a discussion between one of the biggest Tanoim in that generation and a person that was walking, and this is a story that's very hard to understand. How could it be that such a righteous person would say such a thing? This is even something that you don't have to be special not to do. This is basic manners. This rabbi goes and he tells it to this person. This person was quite a wise, clever guy, and he was able to come up with this answer of telling it, well, it's all Hashem's creation, and therefore everything is perfect in its way. So what we're going to need to deal with is the main question is, how could it possibly be that a rabbi would say such a thing? So we actually once, we had last year, the course of JLI was about curious tales of the Talmud. And Mordechai, you remember it? Chanoch also took part. We're starting next week, Bezrat Hashem, another JLI course. And this is about, it's not curious tales of the Talmud, but it's also the stories that we learn in the Tanakh. The stories are, for example, Chet Etzadat, the tree of knowledge. What is the meaning? How could it be that Adam sinned? What happened exactly there? The relationship between Yosef and his brothers, which is interesting. There's a joke that they say about a woman that sat in the Ezrat Nashim in the ladies section. Every year, whenever she heard the story, she used to cry when it came to the story of the brothers of Yosef selling Yosef. How could it be? She used to cry, and they told her. So one year the people tell her, what happened? Why are you crying? So she says, I can't believe that they still, even after last year what happened, they still resold him again. So the truth is that it might be a bit funny, but that's the way to learn the parasha. When we learn the parasha, we've got to try and make it relative to us. We've got to make it as if it really happened last year. So why is it happening again this year? As the Alter Rebbe speaks a lot in Tanya, that every year, every time, every day has a new light. We say it every day in the davening. We say, HaMechadesh betuvoi b'chol yom tamid. What does that mean? That Hashem creates from beginning the world over and over again. Betuvoi, with His kindness, b'chol yom, every single day. So that's what we're going to be talking about, making the stories. We're going to take 6 stories and making them relevant to ourselves. Whoever wants to take part, of course, you can sign up. We're starting on Sunday, Bezrat Hashem. and it's 200 shekel for all of the 6 lessons.
Plus the book.
Sorry?
Including the book.
Including the book, and there's diplomas for whoever completes the course, and of course videos and presentations to explain to
Is it also going to be online after the course ends?
Bezrat Hashem, we're going to record it also, yes. So it's a lifetime access to the content of the course. So back to the story, how could it be that this Tana and says such a thing, tells this person that he is ugly? One of the things that we did in the course that we learned previously is that we explained in a deeper way, as we said, b'pnimiyuta inyanim, what exactly happened. And as Hasidus uses it many times to explain certain things that in a simple way they wouldn't make so much sense. But if we try and understand it in a spiritual way, in a metaphoric way, then we can understand what exactly happened. That's what we're going to do over here. But right before that, let's get to our parsha. How's it all connected to our parsha? So apparently Avraham Avinu, he was the first one to open a Beis Chabad. He was the first one to open a Beis Chabad. What exactly did he do? It says, the Midrash says, the Pasuk says, Vayikra Sham b'Shem Hashem Kel Olam. And what does it mean? Literally it means that he called there the name of Hashem, the God of the world. And the Gemara says, not only that he himself called the name of Hashem, but he caused other people around him to also call out the name of Hashem. How did he do that? So he opened in the middle of the desert, in the area of Be'er Sheva, south of Israel. We all know that the whole way to that, if you travel on Kvish Shesh, road number 6, you'll see on the side, it's all desert. He opened there a Beis Chabad. Whoever wanted to come and eat, no problem, you're welcome to come and join us to eat. Doesn't cost any money. Then, when they finished the meal, so they said, thank you, Avram, you're such a kind person providing us water in the middle of the desert, such a nice meal. And Avram said, that's great, I appreciate it, but you've got to thank Hashem. You've got to thank Hashem. Vayikra Hashem b'Shem Hashem. So there were those that said, you're 100% right, I'll thank Hashem, I agree. Others did not know. They said, well, who is Hashem? And Avram sat down with them and explained to them, who is Hashem? And they said, you know what, you convinced us. 100% right, I'm going to thank Hashem. But there were those, I'm an atheist. They said, I'm an atheist, don't talk to me about Hashem. Or someone that said, I worship this and this idol, the whatever it is, this kind of idol, that kind of idol, the sun, the moon. They had in those days, you name it, all kinds of idols, and they did not want to thank Hashem. So Avram said, okay, you don't want to thank Hashem? Here's the bill. Here's the bill. And how much would cost a good steak in the middle of the desert? 10 times what it costs here. How much, even water? This is something that's very hard to find in the desert. So they saw the bill and they said, you know what, I'll thank Hashem. That's the story of the Midrash. And it's, this is the pasuk that it says, Vayikra Sham b'Shem Hashem Kel Olam, that Avram called out the name of Hashem. Not only he called out the name of Hashem, but other people also called out the name of Hashem. But here's the question. What is the point? What is the point in forcing other people, threatening them, or you pay the bill, or you've got to say thanks to Hashem?
It's the same thing we do with our children. Start good habits.
Right, right. So that's a good point. It says actually, Chanoch lanar al pi darko, which means in English it means that educate a child or a boy according to his way. And the Maimonides brings that down. The Maimonides says that at the beginning you've got to give them candy and encourage them to keep Torah and mitzvot. The Maimonides says that the ultimate goal would be that a person serves Hashem like Avraham Avinu, who was called Avram Oihavi, the person that loved me. He did it from just from love, without any extra help, extra encouragement. That is the goal. So if we're talking about a child, you're 100% right, there's a certain way to do it, but an older person, it's not him saying thank you. It's the bill saying thank you. He sees the bill and he tells himself, you know what, I'm not going to pay this, I'll thank Hashem. So he's not really thanking Hashem. So we've got to understand, why did Avram do this? What was Avram's point? Forcing people just to say Shem Hashem.
Because if you keep on doing something, it may become a habit of, once you do it once, you do it again, you keep on.
That's a good point. Actually, when we talk about tefillin, the mitzvah tefillin that the Rebbe came up with 1967, before the Six-Day War, so Lubavitcher Hasidim, and now actually became something that lots and lots of people do. We put on tefillin, even if a person isn't from, isn't religious, come put on tefillin once, and we know that the power of one mitzvah connects a yid to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in an unlimited way. So that is when we're talking about someone that's Jewish, that he has a Nephesh Elokit, he's got a godly soul, and that's already connected to Hashem. It's an ultimate connection. But you're 100% right. These mitzvahs cause the person to say, you know what, yesterday I put on tefillin, so here's, and this mitzvah of tefillin is a very interactive mitzvah. It's not that you're just telling a person, say something, it's action, it's doing something, and it has a physical touch. He feels the tefillin, so he feels connected also.
The mitzvah tanks, remember that?
The mitzvah tanks, of course, all over New York.
Yeah,
Yud Aleph Nisan.
I had one parked right in front of my kosher restaurant downtown Brooklyn.
Wow, wow. So the Mivtzoyim tanks, as Benish just mentioned, those were places where basically the purpose was to offer people to put on tefillin, or sometimes to learn, because there was half a house already at So, right, there's a point of causing a person to get closer to Yiddishkeit, giving them a taste of Judaism, inspiring them. But if a person says that I am an atheist, and what is the point there? He says he does not believe, it's not him saying it. And maybe it won't even influence him. So right, there is a point to give a person a taste. But sometimes forcing a person, you say, well, what is the point? Why to go for so much trouble to do that? So there's an interesting halakha in the Maimonides, that the Maimonides brings down. If someone ever has to give a divorce, so the way to do it is out of your own will. No one can force you to give a divorce. It's got to be liretzoinai. The person has to want to give it. If a person is forced to give a divorce, it doesn't count.
One of the mitzvahs.
There is a mitzvah, you're right, there's a mitzvah to divorce a woman, which means that if you want to divorce someone, so there's a certain way to do it. Now, once again, doing it, it's got to be from your own accord, with your own will. What happens if someone does not want to give a divorce? Someone says he's not prepared to give a divorce, no chance. Unfortunately, stories like this do happen. And today,
It depends who.
so in Israel, yeah, there's certain ways to deal with it.
It depends. Doesn't it depend if it's a man that's refusing or the woman that's refusing?
So that's it. That also the man has to agree.
If the woman refuses, you could do heter me'arabanim, no?
Right, and also the woman has to agree. Then today there's a heter of me'arabanim where 100 rabbis sign that, I don't know exactly the whole dinim, that there's certain cases where the woman is too stubborn, so the rabbis are able to allow this person to remarry even though he's still married. And the reason is because according to the Torah, a man can marry 2 wives. And it was only because of Rabbeinu Gershom. Interesting story, he lived approximately 1,200 years ago, and he had 2 wives, but they were very jealous, those two wives, and there's a whole story about the way that one wife caused him nearly to die. Some kind of, if I'm not mistaken, it was telling him over to the government then, and they put him into jail. So Rabbeinu Gershom saw that our generations, as the generations go down, they're not worthy, they don't have the capability of living in that kind of lifestyle. So that's why he said, Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershom, this is forbidden, there's no such a thing as marrying
200 years.
This is like 1,000 years, something like that.
1,000 years?
1,000 years.
I thought it was up in the year 2.
Right, so he did it for just 1,000 years. He lived approximately 1,200 years ago. His cherem, he did it for 1,000 years.
So how come
But today, no one has the power to remove that cherem of Rabbeinu Gershom, that thing that he said that it's forbidden. And for a simple reason, we see that the generations didn't change. It's not like today it would be easier to live in that kind of lifestyle. So, getting back to the psak din of the Maimonides. The Maimonides says, well, what is the way if a man refuses to give a get? And the Beis Din say, you've got to give a bet. How do we deal with that? So it says, Makin koifin oisai ad sheyoyme reitzani. And he gives an example. And he says, Ma'achashu reitze liyos mi Yisrael. Because this person wants to be a Jew and he wants to be connected to Hashem and he truly wants to do the mitzvahs and to stay away from the Aveiros. And his Yetzer Hara is the one that's giving him trouble. So Beis Din literally takes him, and Beis Din give him, basically, they physically hurt him, right? They beat him, and he says, yes, okay, I want to give it. They say, until you say I want to give it, we're going to beat you. And he says, he's getting hit, so he says, yes, I want to give the get. And he gives the get. Rambam says, the Maimonides says that's a perfect kosher get that was done out of his own will.
Wait, isn't that coercion though? No.
What do you mean in your question?
Because he did it not, if he would have just, okay, they said, okay, you have to give a get to your wife because this and this, versus them beating him up, so he was afraid not to...
Very good question, 100%. It's not his own will, it's that he's getting beaten. So how does the Maimonides say that this is a perfect get? This isn't a perfect get. It's not done out of his own will, no matter how much he would say, yes, I want to give the get. We all know that he is getting beaten. And that's why he says that he wants to give the get. So the Maimonides, in his special words, explains it, and we're going to need to bring in Hasidus here to the story in order to give a bit of light. The Maimonides says that he wants to be connected to Hashem, and he wants to do mitzvot, and he wants to stay away from the Averot. He's got a Yetzer Hara who should talk for. The Yetzer Hara is attacking him and causing him not to. But his true will is to do the mitzvah, which means to give it out of his own accord. And this, for here we've got to bring Hasidus, because Hasidus, the Alter Rebbe, talks about it in the second chapter, the first and the second chapter of Tanya. That's the biggest Chiddush, probably the biggest Chiddush in Tanya. Tanya was a book that was written by the Alter Rebbe approximately 150 years ago to explain about the Yiddish soul, who we are, to explain what our mission is, what is Torah, what is mitzvahs, how do we basically... how are we supposed to live according to Torah and mitzvahs? And there he says one big chiddush. He says that a person has two souls inside him. He's got the animal soul and he's got the godly soul. What is the big surprise here? What is the big chiddush? We all know that any person, you walk outside, you'll tell him, yes, he'll say you've got temptation to do good and temptation to do bad. And this is the animal soul, and this is the godly soul. What is the big chiddush of the Alter Rebbe? So the truth is that the chiddush of the Alter Rebbe is that they are two separate, two different people inside us. It's not only that it's one person that he has two temptation and he's suffering from what's it called, schizophrenia, right? He's suffering from, he doesn't know who he is. Sometimes he wants to do good, sometimes he wants to do bad. There are actually two people inside him. He's got one Yetzer, which is the godly soul, that wants to do 100% good. And all the time he wants to do good. Then he's got an extra soul, another soul, which is the Nephesh HaBa'amit, the animal soul. And that animal soul wants to do what's comfortable for it, and it doesn't want anything to do with connection to Hashem. So this is what the Alter Rebbe says. And now we could understand a bit more the idea of the Maimonides. What the Maimonides is telling us is basically that when someone doesn't want to do mitzvot, when someone does not want to do keep the mitzvahs of Hashem, it's an external force that is causing him to disobey. But it's not him. Who is him? The godly soul that's there. We've got two personalities inside us. One personality is the Nefesh HaBahamis that does what's comfortable. And that Nefesh HaBahamis sometimes says, you know what? I don't want to give the divorce. I don't want to give the divorce. It does not interest me, not out of my own will. The Nefesh Elokis, if we would take away a second this animal soul, we would ask the godly soul, do you want to give the divorce? He would say, that's what the rabbi told me, that's what the Beis Din decided, that's what Hashem says, of course I want to do it. Why am I not actually going and doing it? That's the external Yetzer Hara, the external Nefesh HaBahamis forcing me to do what's pleasant, what's easy.
What about in the case of... sorry.
Yes. So just to end the point of... And that's why beating him will help. Because beating him, you're basically telling him 1 second, let's just force that Nefesh HaBahamit, that external soul that's forcing you, I'm going to force it to be quiet for 1 moment. And then you can express who you truly are. And when you say, I want to, it means that you really want to. Why? Because if I would ask your neshama, if I would ask your godly soul, do you truly want to? Yes, he truly wants to, with all of his heart. There's an external force that is trying to force him not to listen to Hashem. And we're dealing with that part of the person. We're not dealing with the actual human, with the actual Nefesh Elokis, who is really the person.
This is, we've got to go into this deeper because the external force looks like certain other religions that actually have external forces that are real.
What do you mean external forces?
You're talking about it, you said there's an external force. There are certain other religions that posit two forces in this world. We don't.
So what I mean by an external force is the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara, which is in the person that...
Call it what you want, but you're saying this is a reality. And that's dangerously close to other religions which say there's two realities.
Right. I don't know enough about what the other religions say, so I don't know how to separate the two.
But that's what they say. Two realities.
Right. So here, maybe in Yiddishkeit it's not two realities, but it's the Yetzer Hara, the Nefesh HaBahamit, always wants us to go off track. That is a certain force, a certain not a soul, but it's a nefesh that we have in our bodies that tells us do what's easy and what's pleasant. You don't have to necessarily connect to Hashem. But then we have the Nefesh HaElokit, the godly soul, that wants to constantly connect to Hashem, wants to relate to Hashem all the time. So
saying the godly soul is weaker than the animal soul.
Right.
And the external force that we're talking about is beating.
Which is the animal soul.
Yeah.
Sure. So most of the times it's like that, because most of the times there's a third part of the body, which is the fact that we are humans. As humans, we relate to material, physical things. So there's a big advantage automatically for the Nefesh HaBahamit to overcome the Nefesh Elokit. And that's why most of the people, we suffer from this Yetzer Hara that's trying to cause us suffering. And that's why it says that when does the Nefesh Elokit enter the body? When does it enter the body? 13.
Very late.
Very late. When does the Nefesh Abamit, when does the animal soul enter the body? When he's born. Why? Because we are physical. We are in this world. So you're right. There's an advantage occasionally. And what we've got to try to do is to force, to do iskafia to the Nefesh Abahamis. Certain ways to do it. By training the Nefesh Abahamis. By living a practical Jewish life. By, and as the Maimonides brings an extreme example, by beating this person because his Nefesh Abahamis is so strong. I just want to attend 1 second to Shai's question.
Okay, what about in a case like the person doesn't want to give a get because he feels like that there's a chance of reconciliation?
So that's 100%.
And then the wife doesn't want because of selfish reasons and stuff like that. And
right. So that's
he's
why there's
trying to so what is
so that's why there's a best din that decides in those cases. Every case is an individual case. So Beis Din always tries to give it a chance, and every case again it's specifically they've got to examine the case, the dayanim, and they've got to decide according to that. We are talking, the Maimonides is talking about a case where there's no chance anymore. He has to give a get, and he's not following the rules. He's not doing it out of his own will. He wants to leave this woman that she won't be able to remarry ever. So in such a case, the Maimonides says we use force. So again, each case is individually.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that there's a time you teach that we have an obligation to clothe our godly soul in garments of doing mitzvot and Torah study, because that is food and protection for our neshama.
100%. Perek Gimel and Dalet, after the first 2 chapters, talks about the garments of the neshama. We've got to have certain tools to treat the neshama, to feed the neshama. It's like a person inside us. How do we do it? So it says that Torah is like food. Torah, because food we eat, it becomes part of us. Torah, we understand, it becomes part of us. That helps the Nefesh Elokis. A person learning Torah, he's not the same person as he was before. Keeping a mitzvah is also putting on garments, is connecting to Hashem, and those are the ways that we try and bring an advantage to the Nefesh Elokit, to the godly soul.
Like Shlomo Karbar says, there's a hunger in the world, not for food, but for Torah.
Right. Ki im lishmoya es kol Hashem, lo yirav lalechem. Yes.
Ralph, I think Gabriel deserves an answer on his point, what he made. It is dualism. That's sometimes a big confusion. Because we know that the Greek concept is a dualism, the bad force and the good force. So what's the difference with Judaism now? I think Gabriel makes a big point.
Right.
But the answer, I think, is very simple.
Yes.
Dualism, Greek, has 2 gods. A good God and a bad God. But we know that only there is one God. But how he brings all these concept to the world is by Satan, by
exactly.
The dead, Malachal, Mamevet, and all that. So it's only one God, but he has different ways. We have the good people and the bad people, the good sons and the bad sons. 100%. Is all the time in balance.
100%. So thank you for making it clear. Right. So of course, there's according to Yiddishkeit, there's only one God, and He created the Yetzer Hara. There's actually a very interesting Gemara also that talks about some regrets that Hashem has. Hashem regretted creating exile, and He regretted creating the Yetzer Hara. But these are things that He created. So when we talk about 2 forces, of course, it's not anything that's external from Hashem, that's not connected to Hashem, but it's part of Hashem's creation. And it's just a side that Hashem gives to the possibility of also doing bad.
Can we get back now to the atheists and Abraham?
Yes, just I want to see what Shai has to say.
Exile, and you said something else you said?
Yetzer Hara, exile, and there's also a third thing, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Babylonians.
So
If
why
I'm not
he could
mistaken,
reverse
because-
it if he wants. He's Hashem. He could do it. He could say there's no more exile, no more Yetzer Hara.
Right. So why doesn't he just cancel it? Basically, it's because it's already here. It's already done. So the exile exists. The Yetzer Hara exists. It's regretting. It means, and there's a whole explanation to this idea of regretting. What does it mean that Hashem regrets something? He did not know what's going to happen, what's going to turn out. But we're going to need to keep that for another shiur. And
In the sense how he obviously would know. He knows everything.
right. So these are very good questions. We're going to need to talk about that Midrash specifically.
Isn't there other ways that the rabbinot could make a person change their mind besides feeding them? I mean,
Yeah.
I know,
Sorry? So today there would be other ways. So I don't know, they put him in jail, they freeze bank accounts. I don't know exactly the ways, but they have to. Also, again, these are external ways to cause a person to say that I want, even though the chayra he doesn't really want.
I know when I was in New York, my congregation in New York, I was the one who got the minyan together every morning. The rabbi told me, if this man, don't give him an aliyah, and don't count him in the minyan.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because he doesn't want to give his wife a kid.
Right. So that's another way. That's a cherem.
Yeah.
Cherem, like the cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon. This person, we can't count him as part of the congregation. Nachon, these are all ways that that are used. So this is an important concept in Yiddishkeit. Let's get back to Avraham and Avram and the people that he provided with meals, with food. And there we ask the same question. How could it be that what's the point of forcing these people to say thank you to Hashem if they don't really believe in it? So the truth is that every single human being in the world can understand and can relate and is connected to the level of the fact that Hashem created the world. Which means if you would go to any person here, he is obligated to serve Hashem. Not to believe in idols and not to believe that the world happened out of a big bang or something like that. Sometimes he has an external difficulty. Because he says, if I would serve Hashem, I would be obligated to do what he says. I would be obligated to keep his mitzvot. For if it is a non-Jew, if it's a Gentile, so it would be the 7 mitzvot. It would be the 7 commands that of Bnei Noach, the sons of Noach, that are obligated to do. And if it's a Jew, so it's the 613 mitzvot. So Avraham Avinu once again forcing these people to say thank you to Hashem. When they said thank you to Hashem, they truly meant it. Even though it seems like an external reason because of the bill, because of the fact that if they wouldn't say thank you, so they would need to pay for it, nevertheless, this truly is a belief that's inside them. The same way that a Jew has a Nephesh Eloikis, a godly soul, that 100% is connected to Hashem and 100% believes in Hashem, also Gentiles have a soul that truly believes that Hashem created the world. Because to that level, each person is connected to a different level in the Seder Hishtalshelut. Gentiles are connected to the level of understanding that Hashem is the creator of the world. That is something that their souls can connect to, can relate to. That's why they're not allowed to worship idols. Why aren't they allowed? They don't have to keep all the 13 mitzvot, 613 mitzvot. There's no obligation. We don't go and try and convince them to become Jews. There's no such a point. The point is that they should believe in Hashem and keep the 7 mitzvahs of the sons of Noah. That is their obligation, and that's it. That's good. But they truly are connected to that level. So for example, here's one of the mitzvot, not eating Eiver min hachai, or not stealing and not killing, right? These are things that even if someone says he doesn't believe in that, you expect him to go according to that. And you say, yes, you truly believe that. Even though you're saying that you don't believe it, you actually do believe it, because these are the rules that you connected to, that you relate to. So there's a story about, actually not long ago I also saw a video of the same person. This is a person, his name is Amnon Levi. He's on the television, he's got a few programs, a few things there. So he had a debate with Rabbi Yoel Kahn, who was the chayzer of the Rebbe. Rabbi Yoel Kahn was basically, he repeated all of the sichos that the Rebbe gave over. And the story is that he came to Eretz Yisrael once, Rabbi Yoel Kahn. He had a great memory, because Shabbos, for example, the Rebbe used to talk for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours sometimes. No tape recorder on Shabbos. You couldn't do what we're doing over here with filming it. So how did they remember what the Rebbe said? How were they able to write down the sichot, write down the ma'amarim? So this was the what Rabbi Yoel used to do. Rabbi Yoel Kahn used to basically memorize all the sichos of the Rebbe. Motzei Shabbos, they used to sit around a few Hasidim and they used to talk about the sichot and write them down. So Rabbi Yoel comes to Eretz Yisrael after not being here. He was born here and he left when he was approximately 13, 14, 15. He came here after 40 years that he wasn't in the country. And he was interviewed by this person, Amnon Levi. And Amnon Levi tells him, I find it very hard, after the whole debate going around talking, he says, I find it very hard debating with you. Because whenever I debate with someone, and he does it a lot, he does it till this day. I saw a video not long ago. Till this day he debates and he talks about whether Hashem exists or not. He says, I'm an atheist. So the rabbi was saying, well, if you're an atheist, why did you do a bris? Why did you do a circumcision? Why do you eat matzah? Why do you sit around the table during Leila Seder? That was a debate that I saw not long ago. But that wasn't what Rabbi Yoel told him. And he told Rabbi Yoel, listen, it's so hard arguing with you. Because I'm telling you that I'm an atheist. And you telling me that I'm truly not an atheist, that I'm truly a believer. That I truly believe in Hashem. So it's not like what happens usually in a debate is he would say Hashem does not exist, and the other person would say, I'll bring proofs that Hashem does exist. Here he says, you can tell me 1,000 times that you don't believe, but I'm telling you that you really do believe. It's not much of an argument, it's more just a statement. But this is the approach of Chabad Hasidus. Why? What is it based on? It's based on the fact that Amnon Levi was born a Jew, and that is why he's got a Jewish soul inside of him. He cannot disconnect from his true identity. He cannot say, I don't believe. You are born a believer. It's part of who you are. This is the true meaning of the godly soul. The godly soul basically is part of who we are, and it's connected to Hashem constantly. It's always connected to Hashem.
That's why a Jew can never convert into another religion.
100%. So there are mumarim that which they have certain dinim. They have it's a terrible thing to do to convert, but it doesn't have a real effect in the way that a person always has the Nephesh Elokit inside him. That never goes away. So that was the argument between the two, and it was interesting to remember it because I happened to see not long ago a debate, and he was telling me, why did you do a bris? Why did you do? And he says, you know what? If they would ask me, I wouldn't do a bris. I regret it. If I would have a child now, I wouldn't give him a bris. Then what do we help here? It's not helping trying to convince him that bringing him proofs that he is a believer when he says he's not a believer. Proofs aren't going to help in this case. It's a fact that he is that he does believe. So here we've got over here the we've got over here also a few other stories. So what would you do with this person like Amnon Levi? He says that he doesn't believe. Rabbi Yoel tells him, yes, you truly do believe. No proofs. You don't need to bring any proofs. Nothing like that. but he truly believed. So what do we do with him? How would we solve this problem? We're in a planter, because we say that he truly believes, but he's not prepared to practically do it. So here's a story about Moshe Rabbeinu and Am Yisrael later on in the desert, wandering in the desert for 40 years. And Am Yisrael aren't so happy with what they experienced there. And one of the things that happen after the sin of the Meraglim, right? The sin of the spies. Moshe Rabbeinu sends the spies, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells, Moshe Rabbeinu basically tells Moshe Rabbeinu tells the spies, okay, what's your report? And the spies have very bad things to say about the land, about the people of the land, and they said, you know what, there's no chance, we can't conquer the land. And Am Yisrael say, you know what, they start crying, and this was Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av. Am Yisrael start crying, and they say, you know what, let's go back to Egypt. We are talking about the 5th, the 20% that did leave. Now they're wanting to go back to Egypt. Let's go back to Egypt. Why did you bring us to the desert to wander in the desert, and we can't even conquer the land? Listen to what the spies say. They went, they saw the land. This is impossible. What does Moshe Rabbeinu do? Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayedaber Moshe. And the Mefarshim say, what did Moshe speak to them? Moshe Rabbeinu started shouting at them. Moshe Rabbeinu got really, really angry, and he started just screaming at these people. How can you say that Hashem won't bring us into the land? Look at all the miracles that he did. He took us out of Egypt. He gave us the Torah. How can you say such a thing? 2 psukim after that, the Torah says, Va'amru hinenu va'alinu el hamakom. Here we are ready to go back to the land. At that point, Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, you missed your opportunity. This is before the 40 years of wandering in the desert. They were supposed to go directly, but what Moshe Rabbeinu did was he told them, no, now we're going to be wandering in the desert. You missed your opportunity, and that's that. But what happened here? Am Yisrael, 2 minutes ago, they're saying there's no chance to enter the land. Let's go back to Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu starts shouting at them, and they say, oh, you know what? Yes, let's go back to Eretz Yisrael. This is the power, this is the way to deal with the Yetzer Hara. Sometimes the Yetzer Hara, the external, it's not so external, it's part of who we are, the Nephesh HaBahamit, it's part of us, unfortunately. The Yetzer Hara and the Nephesh HaBahamit tell us, no, you can't go back to Eretz, you're not going to be able to conquer Eretz Yisrael, there's no chance. Moshe Rabbeinu uses a very practical tool. He didn't beat them physically, but he spoke to them in a harsh way, in a strong way, that caused the Nefesh HaBahamis to calm down, put it in its place. And that's why suddenly they're all ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. Here's the other story. It's about the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab was the 5th Rebbe of Chabad, and he had a brother, an older brother actually, but the older brother wasn't the Rebbe. He had they had great respect to each other, but the Rebbe was the Rebbe Rashab. And this person comes to the Rebbe Rashab for a blessing. The Rebbe Rashab says, unfortunately, I'm very, very sorry, I cannot help you. So that person that asked for the blessing goes out of the room, bursts out in tears, starts crying, and the brother of the Rebbe Rashab sees this guy, he sees him crying. He says, what happened? He told him, I went into your brother, asked for a blessing, and your brother said, I cannot help you. I don't know what to do. So the brother of the Rebbe Rashab entered the Rebbe Rashab's room, and he told him, what are you doing? This is your job, to help Yidden, to help Jews. This guy just came out of your room all crying, all broken-hearted, because you didn't give him a blessing. The Rebbe Rashab said, now you can call him in. Now I'll give him the blessing. He came in and he accepted the blessing. What happened over here? Why didn't the Rebbe Rashab give him the blessing immediately, in the first time? He wasn't a tool. He wasn't a vessel. He wasn't what we call a keli to receive the bracha. When he cried, when he became broken-hearted, then he was a keli, a vessel to receive the blessing. And this is sometimes what happens. So here we see maybe 4 or 3 ways, metaphors, ways to break the Nefesh Abami, to put it in its place. We see the Maimonides, the way that the Maimonides says that you sometimes need to beat him physically. You see the way that Moshe Rabbeinu, basically the way Moshe Rabbeinu dealt with it, is Moshe Rabbeinu used strong language. He spoke to them in a harsh way, in a strong way. That's also one way. And we have the story of the Rebbe Rashab, who basically just caused the person to have a tsar, to have a feeling of pain, certain heartbreak or something like that, that he becomes more refined. Now he's worthy of the blessing. Now he can actually receive the bracha and connect to Hashem. So we still have one story to deal with, and this is a story that we began in the beginning about Rabbi Alazhar and this person that he was walking together with. He sees this person, and Rabbi Alazhar turns to him and he tells him, you're just so ugly. The person replies, tell that to the one that created me. What is the explanation? So literally, we cannot say that a tzaddik would say such a word to someone. And even a regular person wouldn't turn around and say to someone else, you just look so ugly. That's basic manners. What happened here is we've got to look in a deeper level, in the way that Chassidut sees things, Pnimiyut HaTorah, the inner part of the Torah. He saw ugliness of Kedusha, which means he saw this person, he wasn't properly following Yiddishkeit. He was ugly in a spiritual way. And what he told him is, and as he uses the word reika, which means empty, reik, from the words reik, emptiness. He turns to this person and he says, you are empty, you don't have Torah and mitzvahs. He wasn't referring to an external ugliness, to something that offend this person personally, but he was telling him that, what about keeping Torah and mitzvahs? What about connecting to Hashem? And that was the way that he actually caused him to say, you know what, you're right. And go tell that to the one that created me, which means he already had the recognition that there's someone that created him. And that's why he replies, tell it to the one that created me. So here we see also Rabbi Alazhar using the harsh words of Moshe Rabbeinu. How can you not believe in Hashem? Hashem took you out of Egypt, all these miracles. Rabbi Alazhar uses the same way, the same metaphor, and telling this person, you are ugly. Which means, not you're ugly literally, but you aren't connected to Hashem. Where's the light of the mitzvahs? Where's the light of the Torah? We can't see that shining on your face. And the person understood that, and he said, you know what? Lech le'uman she'asani, which means go to the one that created me. He already acknowledged that Hashem created him. So that's again to explain in a metaphoric way what happened there between Rabbi Alazhar and the Tana. So what can we learn from this whole concept, from what we spoke about today? Let me just see, because we might be, let's see, 1 second. Okay, so unfortunately there won't be a second shiur because the rabbi cannot make it, but next week Be'ezrat Hashem will have a second shiur. Let's just summarize what we spoke about today and try and bring it into practical ways. We spoke about two things. First of all, that everyone has a Nephesh Elokit, everyone's a true believer. Everyone's truly connected to Hashem. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this has a lot of hashpa'ah, which means this has a lot of results. For example, the result that everyone is a believer, everyone is connected to Hashem. Any Jew, no matter what, in any situation, is connected to Hashem. And the second result, the second thing that we learned is that sometimes we need to use a bit of force in order to deal with the nefesh habamit, with the animal soul. Sometimes, and there are certain ways to do it. Right? Today I wouldn't suggest and recommend to use the shita of Rabbi Alazhar, turning to someone that you look so ugly. Where's your Torah and mitzvahs? Why aren't you keeping Torah and mitzvahs? Today that's not the way. How can we see that, by the way? As generations go down, so we have Moshe Rabbeinu screaming at the Yidden, we have Rabbi Alazhar telling this person how ugly is, the Rabbi Rashab, what did he do? He didn't cause him a broken heart by talking down to him and telling him how bad he is. He just said, sorry, I can't help you. And out of his own accord, that person started crying. So that's already a gentle way to do it. I'll tell you about the Rebbe. With all the thousands and thousands of Jews that went by the Rebbe to receive dollars every Sunday morning, starting from 1988, I think, 87, 88, when the Rebbe, 80?
86.
86 already. Sundays, every Sunday starting from 1986, the Rebbe gave out dollars for charity. Thousands of Jews went by. And what happened was that the Rebbe never ever caused any kind of person to leave crying with tears of pain or of suffering, of anything like that. It's amazing to see the attention that Rebbe pays to each and every person going by, walking by. People that the Rebbe remembered them after years that the Rebbe didn't see them. And there's a video that was just, I've got to see this, they sent it all around. This kid, this Israeli kid, a sabra, a real sabra. He tells the Rebbe he's asking for 3 things. He says he wants his uncle couldn't walk or something like that. He was in a wheelchair. So he asks for the uncle to Be'ezrat Hashem have a refuah shlemish that he should be able to walk. He repeats it also, so that he says, and the second thing is that he shouldn't have any problems with his legs. And that's it, and he stops there. And the Rebbe said, what about the third thing? You said that there are 3 things. So he repeats again that he shouldn't need a wheelchair. So it was basically one thing that the kid said, repeated it 3 times, but the Rebbe paid attention. And then he says to the Rebbe, can I have $1? Can I have another $1? And the Rebbe gives him $3 for the 3 things that are basically 1. But you see the care that the Rebbe had to each and every person that went there. So as the generations go by, and that's why today we don't have the power to actually scream at people that aren't keeping Shabbos. It's not going to work. No throwing stones, no, none of that. That's not going to work. But we do see the idea of a bit of pressure. And what could we practically learn in Avodat Hashem? Practically learning in Avodat Hashem today would be that sometimes there's in keeping Torah mitzvahs we can also add a bit of pressure. There's no harm. The Rebbe taught us a lot about mitzvahs. Sometimes it's not so comfortable walking up to someone that you don't even know. And I remember in Manhattan, even here in Israel we feel more at home. So it's more achi, ma koreh, bo taniach tefillin. It's all we're all one family here. But in Chutz La'aretz, you've got to come up to a person and you've got to say, excuse me, are you Jewish? And the person might not be Jewish. He might be offended because I don't know what you thought that he's Jewish, or you don't want to offer him to put on the tefillin. But the Rebbe wanted us to go with breitkeit, which means to go lechatchila riba, to conquer the world in a way where we do put a bit of lachatz in positive ways. And there's certain things that what's it called, guerrilla marketing or pressurizing in marketing, where, let's say, for example, so there are people that do build websites or things like that. So a guerrilla style of marketing would be, you would go to a person's website, you would build a new website for this person, and you would show him half. You would call him up, you say, here, I've got a brand new website ready for you. This is just the first page. Do you want it? Does it look nice? Okay, now you've got to pay for the rest. That's aggressive marketing. That's with putting in a bit of pressure. And the Rebbe wanted us to use that. So people going on to Mivtzoim, for example, I know someone went to Mivtzoim. So we've got the Lulav and Esrog, right? Sukkot time. And sometimes people don't know that it's a mitzvah that you do 7 days. They think, well, the first day we're going to buy a Lulav and Esrog and we're going to do it. So this person asked around people, did you shake the lulav already today? So one guy said, yes, I did the lulav already. So he said, but did you do it today? Because every day is a different mitzvah. Here's an example for aggressive marketing, guerrilla marketing. It's not enough that you did it yesterday and the first day, because people, it's not like fill-in, everyone knows that you've got to put it every single day. Lulav, sometimes people say, you know what? I do it at the beginning of the Chag and then I put it and that's it. Did you do it also today? So the approach of going to people and offering them, yes, in a way of a bit of pressure, in the positive things, this is something that's okay. This is something that's good. So we can learn from that. And why does it work? Why does it help? You would turn to someone that has no connection because he's got a Nephesh Elokis, because he's got that godly soul inside him that anyways wants to do it. So he'll accept it. That's why people are very willing to keep to put on tefillin. That's something that they would do without a problem, because of this true connection that already exists inside. We're not creating from scratch something. Creating from scratch something, trying to change lifestyles of people. This is something very, very hard. There's got to be some spark of holiness already there. There's got to be a Nefesh Elokis. And if not a Nefesh Elokis, a spark of holiness, a connection, being a bit elevated, so that there's something that we could work with. That's basically the idea.
Go.
Right.